Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to introduce the host and moderator for our Nonprofit Industry Trends panel discussion, Julia Patrick, CEO of American Nonprofit Academy, co-host of the Nonprofit Show. Patrick's a Phoenix native with a background in cultural and social service boards, has worked with over 500 nonprofits. Founder of the American Nonprofit Academy, she identified a need for cost-effective training in the evolving philanthropic sector. Today's nonprofits require passion and business tools, a gap the Academy addresses through engaging discussions, lectures, online courses, and workshops. The goal is to assist nonprofits from leadership to volunteers in achieving their missions with innovative, low-cost programs.
Bert, I think that was you. Damn.
I thought I was the awesome one.
You know, I think I'd rather be the ex-FBI agent, because that's sexier and more interesting.
If you could do it over again.
If you could, I could do it over again. I don't know, I'm a blabbermouth and a gossip, so I don't think I would be good with the FBI. Just a hint. But, well, I am Julia Patrick. I am delighted to be here with the JMT team. They are amazing. I met them recently through our broadcast, our daily broadcast called The Nonprofit Show. We started the Nonprofit Show at the outset of the pandemic, and I thought it was going to be a 2-week gig. Then it turned into a 4-week, 6-week. We've now done more than 1,000 episodes, and we're in our 5th year. So it's really a fascinating thing to be a part of, and it really is just a marvelous thing. Before we go too much further, I've got 2 things I want to do. I want to thank our gentleman from ASL. I speak a lot, and I've never had anyone do ASL translations before, so super awesome, and I say thank you with a lot of gratitude. The next thing I want to do is I think we're going to hear some very interesting things, and I want to do three things, actually. So I'm big into round of applause, but you have to do it like this. Round of applause.
I knew where that was going.
Good job. See, Bart, you are Julia Patrick in chinos. And then I want to do like hair on fire, because this is a big thing. Hair on fire. Like when you hear something, you're like, holy smokes, that just made me have hair on fire. Okay, that was really good for the stunning bald gentleman. Wow, just a little bit of pressure, but you did a beautiful job there, Marty Bird. And then the last thing is, and this is because we have some gentlemen from the South, and that is clutch your pearls. Clutch your pearls, and that's like and if you want to shout out, oh my, oh my, then I think that's appropriate. So, because, you know, if anything, this time together has really taught me some amazing things. And I don't want to be fear-based, but some of them have been clutch your pearls moments. Bart Holzer joins us today. He's the Chief Information Security Officer for Affinity Technology Partners. Has a fascinating background in the FBI, government work, understanding some of the bigger picture things that we don't always understand or talk about. Ken Serini joins us. We met last night briefly. He is the managing partner for Serini and Associates, and you just got off the stage upstairs and bolted down here, so thank you very, very much. Very, very much.
Sorry I cut into everybody's time.
No, it's awesome. Jeff Young joins us from Nashville, Senior Vice President of First Bank, our financial guru here on the panel today. So we're going to definitely be clutching our pearls and have some hair on fire moments. And then the wonderful JMT CEO herself, Jackie Tizo, joining us. And we are delighted to have her on our panel, to have her vision, 30 years in practice, and really bringing a lot of vision to our sector. So I applaud you for your work. I said this to you privately. I'm going to say this publicly. Your team is outstanding. Yes. If I could pack them in my suitcase and take them home to Phoenix, I would, because they are just fabulous. Thank you. Round of applause for sure.
Applaud them.
Round of applause. Now, it's really amazing. You know, today we were really lucky to hear from Aaron Harris about the value of continuous accounting. And in it, he talked about AI, automation, fintech, and efficient operations. not just like leaning into something because it's what all the cool kids at the cool table are doing. AI is fearful, it has a lot of opportunities, but it's still very new. And so I kind of want to use that as a guide star for some of our conversations. So Bart, we're going to start with you, and we're going to ask you, with your background in security and the federal level, really marching through also a changing time. I imagine when you started your career, these things weren't even fathomable. Maybe they were.
They were not.
Okay, that's a good start. Do you think that the nonprofit sector really understands cybersecurity risk, and then to follow that up, cybersecurity mitigation or strategy?
That's an easy one. The short answer is no.
Oh, you said you might do
And
that.
If you want to hear more, you can come to my talk tomorrow. See what I do?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to switch seats because you're the master. That's a hair on fire moment for me.
So I yield back 9 minutes and 55 seconds.
Okay, then prove.
You want more.
I want more.
You want more.
You know, prove me wrong, because I don't like living in fear. I don't like that mindset. And I think in the nonprofit sector, because we deal with fearful things, you know, a lot of times, it's easy to cycle down as opposed to cycle up.
Sure.
So how do we think about this?
Well, I can answer probably with a few anecdotes in the fact that I have worked for quite a few nonprofits in the midst of an incident. So we do incident response. Something bad happens and we show up to hopefully help handle the situation. Usually there's a kind of a happy ending. Not always. Sometimes the money's gone and you don't get it back. But I can tell you what I've heard over and over again. I've heard, why would anybody want to target my nonprofit?
That's right.
I'm not a government agency.
That's right.
I don't do government work. I'm not a contractor. I'm not Lockheed Martin. I don't have millions of dollars in whatever that for them to steal, and all of these things. I have heard nobody would target a nonprofit. We do good work.
We do the work of the angels.
We're on the side of angels.
Right.
Sure. And I know from my wife being in the nonprofit space for over 10 years now, oftentimes is a time, energy, and budget thing. We just don't have time to think about this. We've got to do our next, reach out to donors. We are worried about operations. Even keeping the lights on is difficult sometimes. So you want to talk about spending that much money on cybersecurity? Get out of here. We don't have that. And I've seen firsthand where donors will love to give money to give it to a program. And in some cases, maybe a big company might give you a bunch of laptops, but who's gonna give you money to put paper in the printer or do cybersecurity? That doesn't happen as often as money that goes directly to programs. So it's kind of it's an unfair fight in some ways. And if you completely turn your lens the other way and you think about it from an adversarial perspective. So I'm a bad guy. I've been doing this for years. I could have gotten a real job, by the way, because I'm really smart and talented and I can write code and do all this stuff, but I've decided to live a life of crime.
Right.
And I hacked the government. Now they're doing a pretty good job now, so that's frustrating me. So, well, I said pretty good. I didn't say good.
Unless you're Suffolk County.
Yeah, and then, the federal government got hard, so let's target some state governments, maybe some cities, municipalities, had some success there. They're starting to tighten things up. Who am I going to attack next? Who has a lot of money coming in and out, perhaps? Who doesn't have resources to throw towards security? Who has a big list of maybe rich people? And who is that I can target? And nonprofits are on the list. Right. If you don't believe me, you can Google it. And what you'll see is over the last, let's just say 10 years, what we have seen in cybersecurity is we've seen these huge tidal waves of attacks hit certain industries. And some of you in the room may have experienced a type of fraud in real estate where you're buying a house and something bad happens and the money goes to the wrong place. And if it hasn't happened to you, it's probably happened to somebody you know. Real estate, healthcare, banking, municipalities I've already mentioned. We've seen these tidal waves hit these big industries. And once the tidal wave hits, it's not going away.
Right.
The waves just keep crashing on the shore of whatever that industry is. And we have seen nonprofits targeted by adversaries for the reasons I just mentioned. And so, yeah, I don't know if the majority of nonprofits really get a good grasp of risk. And that's not singling out nonprofits, because every industry kind of faces it in a little bit of a different viewpoint, but they're facing those same tidal waves, they're facing the same daily waves. And it isn't one of those things, well, let's just buy some cyber insurance and we'll be good. Right. Unfortunately, I wish that were easy, but there's nothing easy in cyber.
You know, Bart, it's so interesting. I think that that's one of the dirty little secrets about the nonprofit sector as well, is that they're afraid to talk about it, you know, because it undermines their credibility and their trust factor with their donors and their grantors, and it's not good PR. And also, I think there's a very odd, and this is a hair on fire moment. Okay, everybody, hair on fire moment. I think that there's this sense of compassion. So in the for-profit sector, when a disruption occurs, it's like you're on the phone to the cops and you're getting their butt in jail and going. But in the nonprofit sector, we're like, well, you know, she has a gambling problem and let's try and help her, or that, if that's internal, or it seems to be there's a little bit more compassion than should be allowed, right? It's an odd dynamic, and because we don't talk about it, it's.
So when we talk about security, so cyber, we tend to kind of think about technology and the cool tools that we want to deploy and the AI robots that are going to fight the war in the future. A lot of cyber is not sexy and exciting. It's boring. It's policies and procedures. It's multi-factor authentication, and not just in systems, but also in how our money gets paid or received. So there's all this work that's kind of boring that still needs to be done. Right. And I would say there's kind of another anecdote, a little sensitive topic, but for nonprofits who work with children, we have seen historically people work their way into those nonprofits in order to get access to children. Right. And without good background checks, in the hiring process, that's a breakdown in security. We have the exact same problem when it comes to technology. And you asked me, did we know it was coming when I first started in the Bureau? I've said this story several times. When I started in 1997, we had one case. We had one case with a nexus to the internet. Wow. And we were wondering, is this internet thing going to catch on? And if it does catch on, will the bad guys use it?
Right.
Because we might want to staff up. When I left 20 years later, the number of people we were targeting online was classified because every bad guy uses the internet. So we were chasing people all over the world. Yeah.
Amazing. Bart Holzer, thank you for your service.
Sure.
And
Can I throw in one comment there?
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned schools and you mentioned children. But there's another place where schools and children become super important with respect to cybersecurity. Children are great in terms of their social security numbers and everything because children don't have credit ratings. So because children don't have credit ratings, they're not checking their credit ratings. They don't know if their identity has been stolen.
Okay,
And
that's the clutch the pearls moment for sure.
So what's happening is a lot of these people are going out there and they're getting into schools and grabbing the social security numbers and they're setting up credit cards and everything else because no one's looking at that.
Fascinating. Well, that takes us to Ken Serini. Let's come at this from the financial and the audit side. And when we think about this, when you're working with clients or you're working within our industry, do you think that we are spending enough on this and actually budgeting and understanding how to invest going forward? Or is this just reactionary?
Are you talking in the sense of cybersecurity or cyber? Okay.
Yeah.
I think what you're finding is that a lot of organizations are going out there, and you mentioned cyber insurance. I think they're looking at cyber insurance and saying, I got cyber insurance, I'm covered. And they've done their job, they got their cyber insurance, so if anything goes wrong, they're going to be covered by the cyber insurance. But the reality of the situation is, once they try to go and collect on those policies, they're not doing half of what they're supposed to be doing within those policies. They're going to get a rude awakening where they're going to find that there's not a whole lot that's actually going to be covered under those cyber policies. So no, I don't think nonprofit organizations, I don't think anybody's really doing a good enough job with respect to all of this. There are new regulations that are coming out on a regular basis with respect to making sure that you've got proper authentication and everything else in place. It's just going to get, those regulations are just going to get deeper and deeper and steeper and steeper. If you're going to be working with the federal government or the state government in terms of getting funding, you're going to have to jump through a whole lot more hoops going forward in order to get those funding levels in. So, the world is changing, and, the nonprofit sector has historically been behind the curve with respect to technology. And, when the pandemic hit and everybody was forced to kind of move forward from a technology perspective, I kind of thought maybe the nonprofit sector would catch up. And then the new wave of, crap hit, and the nonprofit sector is back into a situation where they're behind the curve again. And when you're looking at where the nonprofit sector should be spending money, and there's a lot of places and a lot of good things that need to be done, but this is one of those infrastructure spends that are really essential. You need to be spending on technology, you need to be spending on protection, you need to be spending on cybersecurity issues, and if you're not, I think you're just going to be in a situation where you're opening yourself up. And part of that is training, it's staff training, because a lot of the cybersecurity threats are not, as you said, they're not always high tech. Some are low tech. I mean, it's amazing how many individuals, because I mean, the cyber criminals are relying upon individuals, let them in. They just open the door and let them in because organizations are not doing an adequate job of training their staff. They're not doing, phishing. Testing, and not testing, but samples and stuff, and throwing things out where you can see and train your staff if they're clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking on or whatever. I mean, it's probably about a month ago, I got a phone call from someone who claimed he was with the Drug Enforcement Agency, and he gave me his name, he gave me his badge number, he directed me to the website, and he told me that my information was being used in drug trafficking and everything else. And I told him, I said, well, that's great. I'm going to hang up now and call your number on the website to see if it's actually you. And he said, let me talk to you. You need to talk to my supervisor. Of course. And I ended up hanging up and calling the number. And it turned out that the guy said, yeah, there's a guy who's doing this. But the guy was really convincing. The guy was really real. I started to get nervous for a while there. And but that's what they're preying on. They're preying on people who are going to cave in on some of this stuff, and it's that low tech that works really well in terms of this.
Ken, as we follow up this part with you, can you give us a guideline of what you would like to see in terms of our budgets as a percent to total of what we should be putting, investing in this? You can't say like 85% of the budget.
Again, I don't know that I'm the right person to answer that question. I think Bart is probably in a better position to answer that question. And I don't know that it's necessarily a percent of budget either, because if I've got a large organization, that percent of budget may be much smaller. If I got a smaller organization, percent of budget might be a little bit bigger. I think it really comes down to is, are you doing a sufficient job of protecting the organization, protecting the assets of the organization? We had from an example perspective, we had an organization which was a chapter of a national organization. And every year they would wire their annual dues over to the national organization. And somebody absolutely knew when that was occurring, and they must have been sitting there waiting, and they sent an email and saying, oh, we changed our bank account information, and the organization did not go back and verify it, did not go back and check it. They wired $100,000 and they never got it back again.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely a hair on fire moment. I got to see that. We have a question in the back.
Do we have a microphone?
We did.
I think what you're talking about, like the transactions that are taking place in nonprofit organizations, really, their accounting transactions that are taking place. So in a lot of ways, the accounting department becomes the front line of defense for organizations to capture this like anomalies that are taking place in bank transactions. I've been in 2 organizations where they've been hit by fraud, and both of them had deficiencies in their accounting specifically related to their month-end close process because they were waiting. They were doing quarterly closes or annual closes, and it was already it was too late already to identify the fraud. So
you're going back to the next part of, I think, where this conversation is going to go later, which went back to the original conversation this morning at 9 o'clock, where there was the whole thing about continuous accounting and AI, and where AI can play a really key role in identifying inconsistencies.
Sure.
And I think that's, we're all human. We're going to miss things. AI is not necessarily human, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's not necessarily going to miss the same things. But yeah, you're right. I mean, controls have to be in place. There have to be systems and everything else. I tell my clients all the time, give me a week and I can rob you blind, because I can find where the controls are lacking, and I can go into any environment and I can steal from them.
Sure.
So it's if somebody can get in, they can steal from you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great comment. Let's move on to Jeff Young for a moment. Jeff, as Senior Vice President of First Bank, you've been instrumental in over $200 million in funding, working with nonprofits. You have a very active board leadership life that I read on your CV. So you're sitting on the other side of the desk in 2 ways, right? Funding, but then also serving as a leader, making those decisions, like how are we going to fund this? How are we going to lean into this? Who would steal from a nonprofit? We're not going to have these problems, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these discussions, what are you seeing with this ecosystem in your community and with your clients?
I would say that it has increased dramatically over the last few years. You think about when something happens, who's the first person you call? Well, you have discussions internally about, oh gosh, what just happened to us? But the next call should be to your bank or to your banker. And what have discovered is oftentimes the company or the nonprofit is not leveraging every tool and resource that's already available at the bank. And I'll give you an example. So there's ACH filtering, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. There's positive pay, which deals with check writing. You can set up the ranges for when checks clear and when they don't. I've been steering people to doing more ACH related transactions versus wire. I know people love wires because it's instant, it goes in. If it's not a time sensitive transfer, I really tell people to do ACH. And the reason for that is if something goes sideways on that, you do have recourse, a small window of time, which means that's where artificial intelligence comes in. But you do have a small window of time where you can dispute it and you have recourse capability of getting the funds back. Wire, it's a lot trickier and it's more difficult. It can be done, but you have to be dealing with a bank that recognizes it fraud. It's a big case. So I've been steering people to do that. If you're in a business where you're still writing a lot of checks, I would say look into the ACH world a little more. The transaction costs are a lot less. Banks have got templates, online platforms these days with a ton of bells and whistles to move money efficiently. But on the fraud protection side, they also have filters and fraud systems. There is a cost associated with that, but if you were in one of my sessions earlier, I was actually competing against myself. I was saying you can negotiate with your banker. You can negotiate the analysis fees. Yeah. You can negotiate your earnings credit and what you're getting as the offset for those services that you're getting at the bank. So I would have that conversation. That's on the bank side. For the organizations themselves, it really needs to be baked into your annual CapEx budget. I've sit on the board of Goodwill. There are multiple locations, multiple retail locations. We have built into our point of sale, we have built into our CapEx budget a point of sale upgrade every 2 years or something like that. If you have that sophistication with your CapEx, that's a great place to put this. I think it needs to be done on an annualized basis, and just a little piece needs to be included for technology, staying in front of these fraudsters, because just like they said, for as hard as you're working on the mission and advancing the cause, there's some Yahoo somewhere that is trying to take it.
Yeah.
And
I
they're
think
getting more sophisticated too.
Right. I think that's the thing about the intelligence level of this, and the, you know, it's so sophisticated. I mean, oh my gosh, you know, your conversation, Ken, about the person that, you know, actually went through, you know, a conversation on the phone, even to your educated ear and temperament, could kind of push you a little bit, right? And so it's a fascinating thing to be thinking about and bringing that. As a banker and working with nonprofits, I think there's a lot of resistance for nonprofits to think of their banker as a partner. How are you reaching out to them to kind of start that conversation before you have to have it because there's been some sort of issue?
It is a challenge, I'll say. I mean, banking products are commoditized. A checking account's a checking account, no matter where you go. Really, I think it's finding out, is community service in the DNA of the bank. You go to every bank, they say, oh, we're for the community, we love. Well, you really want to break that open and see how much have they actually given to the community. And then on a banker level, you want to find people who sit on boards and have diversity with how many boards they're on, size, what their missions are, and then someone who can actually dive in and understand your mission as well and know, you know, the challenges that you face. So the value proposition of any bank is really in the banker, I think, because of the commoditized products and services.
Yeah.
So that would be the way that I think you differentiate.
Yeah, thank you. I'm from a banking family, so you just said the magic words.
Yep.
Thank you. You know, your banker is that person in the boat, along with your, if you ask me, your attorney and your CPA and your HR person. I mean, they guide that boat across the way.
Sorry, dude.
And your security guy.
And the security guy. Oh, hair on fire!
Forget him.
Hair on
I'm right
fire! Clutch the pearls in embarrassment. That's an, oh my. Oh, dude. And we were doing so well.
So close.
Okay.
You're drowning.
I know. I'm drowning.
I'm on the door floating in the. Yeah.
Jackie.
I'll throw you a life jacket.
Yeah, we need to like buy him a cocktail soon. Jackie Tiso, you know, again, really an interesting trajectory of thought, of content here at Innovate 2024. An amazing amount of energy and thought leadership. One of my favorite things is the 10-10-10 rule. It was a book written by Susie Welsh years ago, and it's how do you look at a situation in the next 10 weeks, 10 months, and 10 years. And it's stuff that your mother taught you, basically, like, is this really an emergency? Or, yeah, this is really an emergency. Or will we remember this in 10 months? Nah, we won't remember it. But where do you see that 10-10-10, the 10 weeks, 10 months, and 10 years as we're having these discussions? Because everybody out here is going to go back to their community, their organization, and start sharing this information. What does that lens look like?
Wow.
You
Tough
saved the
question.
hardest one for you.
So,
I didn't say I'd make it easy.
so the 10 weeks, for real, the cybersecurity, it really is so hugely important. We, it's amazing to understand, but we had insurance, we have all kinds of security, we thought we were really bulletproof, and fortunately we haven't had anything happen, but we engaged in an assessment, and that assessment identified so many potential holes, and we turned around and we were just stunned. And we turned around and we said, okay, we have to address this. And that is definitely, and you know, when I think about the 10-week, it is something that there are so many good firms. We actually use Affinity. They are really excellent. We have phishing tests done regularly, all different kinds of things put in place. And so that is something that I really would say in 10 weeks. Another area is in expense reduction, streamlining, automation. ACH was brought up. I think most organizations don't realize, there was a study that came out recently that talked about it's almost $9 to process an AP bill and get it paid. $9. That's the cost to an organization. Automating that process, and automation can be as cheap as 50 cents a bill versus $9. And you have the security with the payments and everything, and it can be live in 2 weeks, guys. So you are helping your team and your staff, you're providing security for your organization, safeguarding your money, moving into an ACH environment. It's just one thing after another in terms of benefits. So sort of 10 weeks, that's what I would be, looking at, those two things.
Awesome.
When we think about the 10 months, what I think about there is I'm all about moving organizations from being in this, what I call rear view mirror mode, into getting into forward focus mode and automating as much as you possibly can. We talked about the continuous close. I'm a huge proponent of that. Who goes into their bank every day to check their bank account, their balances, whatever? Right, everybody does it, right? You go into the bank. Well, if you have Intact, you turn on your bank fees, you go into Intact, you're doing a daily reconciliation of your account. The information is coming down, it's matching, and now you have a daily reconciliation of your account without having to wait, oh, it's month end, I've got to do this whole big reconciliation. If you have 5 accounts, whatever it might be, turning that on and laying out a plan to turn that on would help your organization immensely in terms of, here again, protecting your money and getting visibility to your money. I would also look at how you budget and project forward. Start looking at, on your P&Ls, create a duplicate of it, start creating the projection forward. If everything in our budget stays exactly the same for the next 8 months, what are we looking like at the end of the year? And here again with Intact, you can actually make duplicate budgets. You can also calculate, well, we think this amount is going to go down, so you could have a column in there for adjustments that are just on the fly as information comes in. And now you're getting a projection of where you're going to go. Imagine how valuable that might be for a program, for a particular grant. So getting yourself into that sort of mindset of let's look forward more than just backwards.
I love that. And that's just immense wisdom for everything from your HR to the investments that you make, how you manage an endowment, how you invest in people, your board. We have a problem in this country with aging boards.
Yes.
1.8 million nonprofits registered in this country with an aging board dilemma and problems.
And
so
a lot
this
of
is great.
A lot of personnel are aging out as well.
Yes.
It's becoming harder and harder to find personnel. You guys know that. If you've lost any personnel, you know how difficult it is to find personnel. The cost of that personnel is higher than ever before, and sometimes the cost is higher and the skill set of the personnel is lower. So there's tremendous pressure on organizations, and part of it, the planning, is personnel planning. Your ability to look at your team and project out with your team, where your team going to be. Are they going to be in the same spot? Are they going to be on your bus, on your nonprofit bus, or are they going to potentially leave? What would be the impact to your organization if they left? This is all hugely important to organizations. Almost every one of our clients is struggling with personnel, either not having personnel, trying to find it, or the personnel that they have, they're trying to get them onboarded, and it's a huge investment, to onboard personnel.
Yeah. The average AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, has this chilling statistic that every time I see it, I'm always like saying to the CEO, Mike Geiger, if any of you know him, tell me this is not true. And the stat is the average development director is staying for only 18 months. And that's the person bringing the money in. You know, no money, no mission, no mission, no money, right? I mean, that whole
And there goes
trait
the
line.
relationships.
And that's right. And there
Yes.
goes the relationships. And so it's such a, talk about hair on fire, clutch your pearls moment. It's catastrophic. And so we need to be thinking about this so that we can pull people ahead. What is fascinating conversation?
Going back to just one comment, sorry.
No,
Going back
please
to
do.
what you said, you know, 2023 was the first year that individuals who were 55 and older, there were less of them working than were not working or retired.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
you're seeing that a lot of that upper level management, those founders of nonprofit organizations, the level of them that are going to be retiring
Correct.
or have retired is
Correct.
is at a very high level.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. And it's very, very difficult. The board members also coming in, being able to develop your board. You have new members coming in, they're young, they might be inexperienced. How can you help your board members develop and understand how they can properly provide the guidance and the fiduciary responsibility they have to your organization?
Yeah.
Those are all hugely important aspects.
And just on that point of fiduciary responsibility, I would say that if board members are given the option where you present, listen, we have our pants down here when it comes to cybersecurity, just security in general, you know, they have a liability and a risk role to support your mission and your organization. And so if it's an issue of budget and its cost, I would really want to challenge that and take it back to the board and say, here's our budget. You know, we're trying to save for rainy day scenarios, and we have enough CapEx for just the stuff we've got to spend on CapEx. I would challenge that and share with them the risks associated with losses, hard money losses that could take place if you don't invest in this, and speak candidly to your board. And if you got turnover on the board, make sure each board member is aware. Listen, your job is fiduciary, and there's liability that you have for the recommendations you give. And this is one of the areas that we feel like we have a hole, and I think you can get some traction.
I was going to say, this is one of the questions I asked in my session, but I'll throw it out to the group here. How many of you guys have a risk committee? Very few.
Very few.
You know, and that's part of the issue is there's so many risks these days in the nonprofit sector, and you're in a situation where, you know, the board isn't really focusing on risk because the organization isn't focusing on risk.
Right.
You know, and if you're in a situation where you put together a risk committee where they're focused on all of the things that we've been talking about today, as well as other areas of risk within the organization, changing regulations, staffing, cybersecurity, AI, policies and procedures, insurance, you know, audits, you know, proper procedures, whatever. You go through all of those things, you know, if you're not focusing on them, then you're leaving yourself exposed.
Absolutely. You know, this has been fascinating. I really appreciate having this conversation. We need to have these conversations more. Jackie, I loved what you said about looking forward and not being, you know, looking in the rear view mirror and dealing with things because there's been some sort of punitive action. And so I think that for me is really one of the big messages. Bart Holzer, Chief Information Security Officer, my new best friend that I love to tease, from Affinity Technology Partners. A storied past. You told me privately over here that, you know, when you started, nobody was thinking about in the FBI about computer science and bringing this type of talent and track in. They probably were like, what the hell, give him a job. And then now, you know, it's probably dominating the Bureau. And so what a storied place that you've held in our country and for this topic. Ken Serini, managing partner of Serini and Associates, really giving us some guidelines on how we can be more proactive and we can help sell some of these investments to our decision makers and our boards. So oftentimes really don't understand this, and they're asked in an hour and 45 minutes that they've taken off to try and really grapple with some heady things. And so I really appreciate your perspective. Jeff Young, we need our bankers, man, and the Senior Vice President of First Bank. thank you for working with our sector and really leading the way on that. I work with so many nonprofits, and they're always amazed that they can actually have a financial relationship with a financial institution. It's kind of stunning. But as many speakers have said here, you know, you are a business first, and your 501c3 or C6 is really only a designation by the IRS. You are still in business.
That's right.
So you need to think that way strategically. Wow, Jackie Tizo, I know you're really exhausted. You've got a lot cooking, my friend. But this has been amazing, and I love the perspective that you bring to our sector. Given your time served and the exciting things moving forward with your organization and your amazing staff, it's really a pleasure to get to see you to work and help our sector. Again, I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, co-host, one of the co-hosts, we have 8 now, of the Nonprofit Show. And so I've just been delighted to be a part of this and to be invited with this august group. Before we let you go, the good news is we have an event to go to. That's like Clutch the Pearls, Hair on Fire round of applause, because it's at this sexy place called The Tower across the street somehow. You know, you know it's going to be good when it's called The Tower. It's going to support Rodman for Kids, and there's going to be a lot of activities going on that will really be fun. Another way to network, meet some more of your cohort, and learn about what everybody has been learning here at Innovate 2024. And so I believe we will be starting that at commencing around 6:15 or 6:30. Okay, and so there'll be some guides to get us to where we have to go, and we look forward to meeting you there. So definitely the round of applause, don't you think? Round of applause. Oh, and everybody's doing it. Everybody, the cool kids at the table are doing it. Hey, everybody, thank you very much. Have a safe and fun evening, and we'll see you back here. Thanks.